Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Uncanny X-Men number 271, cover dated December 1990. Now this is part 4 of X-Tinction Agenda, so we're into the second act of a 3-act, 9-issue crossover event storyline featuring Uncanny X-Men, New Mutants and X-Factor. And this cover is by Jim Lee, inked by Scott Williams. I don't know that this is one of my favorite covers he ever did. It's very busy. There's a lot of detail on the cover. It's something that you kind of have to study in order to make sense of it because of all the various tentacles and wirings having to do with Cameron Hodge. Definitely Jim Lee does the most detailed and busy version of Cameron Hodge's mechanoid body in the course of the crossover series. I would say in terms of a design idea, really what we've got here is more or less of a circle crossing around from Hodge to Wolverine to Psylocke to de-aged Storm. Like I said, not my favorite one of Jim Lee's covers, certainly not as strong a design as the previous issue 270 on this particular title. Let's open this one up to the first page, and as is the device of Claremont's in all 3 of his parts, we get this dramatis personae, a couple of panels featuring at the top the X-Men, and now we're going to see Jubilee, Wolverine and Psylocke get in on the X-Tinction Agenda action. And down the bottom we have Storm and Reign, who are prisoners, or all of these, the 3 New Mutants and Storm were taken prisoner by Genosha's magistrates and press gang back in the first part of the crossover series. Boom Boom and Rictor have escaped the Citadel. Storm escaped, but she went back in order to take someone prisoner, to be an ace in the hole, and Reign is the prisoner of Cameron Hodge and awaiting what it is that he plans to do with her. So here we have what shall I say? A character who's appeared in 1 or 2 of Claremont's X-Men stories up to this point. A TV news reporter, Manoli Wetherill, who's based on a real-life friend of Claremont's, and she's catching readers up here in these middle panels, these 4 middle panels regarding what's happened to this point. And we get to see here too the Genoshan president, who looks a lot less like Ronald Reagan in Jim Lee's version versus John Bogdanov's in X-Factor. You can see on this page all the detail that Lee is putting into the backgrounds for the aircraft carrier here, for the city of Hammer Bay there, with the Citadel, the tallest building in Hammer Bay too. Lots and lots of detail in the backgrounds by Lee in this issue. 22 pages of story and art, and very much one of Lee's best issues on Uncanny X-Men, bar none. And you see it here, turn the page, we've got our title for this particular issue, Flashpoint, and we have our creative team here on the flyaway papers on the ground in front of Rictor and Boom Boom as they run and flee from these magistrates in the air in their flitter vehicles. So the creators are words Chris Claremont, pencils Jim Lee, inks Scott Williams, colors Glynis Oliver, and letters Tom Orzechowski. Something to note here is that Jim Lee and Scott Williams are still very early in their career-long collaboration. They've done less than 10 issues together as penciler and inker, but by this point their respective styles have really gelled in a tremendous synergy of pencil and ink. So great anchor image here of Rictor and Boom Boom fleeing those magistrates. I like the use of a screen tone here in the background. It's nighttime. And also, like I was saying at the beginning of this video, there's such detail in the backgrounds. You can see here the garage doors, but you can also see the external fire escape here. That is something that Jim Lee didn't have to draw. If he didn't have the time, if he didn't want to do it, he didn't have to do it, but he's doing it. And it looks fantastic. So here we have Tam and who is the other magistrate there as well? Does she? Josie. So Tam and Josie, and they have targeted Rictor and Boom Boom, and Tam has decided, Tam by the way is the girlfriend of Havok, and that will be important later in the issue. She's decided rather it would be better to kill the fleeing New Mutants than to hand them over to Hodge's tender mercies. And then Jubilee appears, swings into action, and blinds them with a display of her firecracker explosions. So this is a great little action sequence that we have here as she swings on the lamppost, and the magistrates crash to the ground. And Wolverine grabs her on one of these fire escapes as well. And he says to her, "Ease up on the motor mouth, kid. Pay attention to business." And Jubilee protests. "Hey, I can take care of myself. Thank you very much, Mr. Smart Guy Know-It-All Wolverine. I was doing just fine long before I met you." And this is consistent now with the way that Claremont has been characterizing Wolverine for the longest time, at least since Uncanny X-Men 205. He is a more measured, pragmatic, and also laconic in his speech, but he's very much practical minded. Back then, Jubilee, you ran solo. Now you're part of a team. Your actions have consequences for people other than yourself, and grandstand plays only end up getting the wrong folks hurt. Nice work though, but putting down that patrol. So he does give her some praise, but really you get this sense that there is a mentor tutee role that is developed between Wolverine and Jubilee, and that he's teaching her lessons, maybe lessons that she needs to know before he passes on. Because again, with Claremont's characterization of Wolverine since Uncanny X-Men 205, when he was in that fight against Lady Deathstrike, Wolverine has been presented as being weaker than he'd ever been in the past. His mutant healing factor is not working the way it once did, and so he's more vulnerable, and he can contemplate the possibility of his death. Interesting to note also in terms of the characterization on these pages, Psylocke is here in the background, but she says nothing, and she jumps down to the ground working in tandem with Wolverine and Jubilee, but again saying nothing. And this is in keeping with her new form, the form of a Japanese ninja master assassin. Also, in terms of craft techniques, 1990 craft techniques, we have a nice color hold in the background here for Genosha, the Genoshan cityscape in the background. So, as I was saying, lots and lots of detail on these pages, and smooth storytelling too. Now, a great anchor image here of Wolverine using his claws against the magistrates, Jubilee kicking one of them, maybe in the jaw. It's a little bit unbelievable that Jubilee, who's only 14 years old, would be able to knock an adult magistrate to the ground. But maybe what comes into play here is something that Claremont established a long time ago, that mutants have more than ordinary human strength. So that could be an explanation of how she knocks that adult magistrate to the ground. In any case, a great anchor image. It allows Jim Lee to show off his mastery of back muscles there as well. It all looks very credible and believable. And also we've got a separate panel for Psylocke kicking. It looks like Josie there in the jaw as well. And in the narrative captions we get nice poetic descriptions of the various strengths of the different characters. But what I like is the words concerning Psylocke. Psylocke is the personification of power and grace. Literal poetry in motion, where Wolverine's more a berserk battering ram, but no less effective. So this little trio are, formidable, especially Wolverine and Psylocke. So another great page here, and a nice bit of fight choreography where Tam on the ground grabs Wolverine between her two legs and knocks him over onto his back there. That is really nice storytelling there from Jim Lee. He's pushing himself. So at this point in his career, he's only 2.5 years into it, and he really has come on in huge leaps and bounds in terms of his skill level. You can still see some of his artistic influences coming through. Arthur Adams, of course, as well as Michael Golden. Michael Golden really showing up in terms of Jim Lee's care and concern for tech in these issues, but also in the deep background are his childhood influences of John Byrne in particular, and also Frank Miller. You can show it up. You can see the Frank Miller in the fight choreography in particular, I would say. So this is a nice anchor image here of Tam using her stun baton on Wolverine, knocking him again to the ground. And remember what I said, Wolverine is not in his prime in this particular point in continuity. He's weakened, so she can get the better of him in certain regards. And again, we get to see Jim Lee trying a particular pose that we haven't seen from him before. I always like that with young artists when they're pushing themselves and moving beyond the easy poses and trying new ones, when they become more and more confident in their command of anatomy and perspective. And now we get this nice 3/4 profile close-up on Tam there. Nice hatching on her face as well, indicating the shadow cast by that illuminated stun baton. And she says to Wolverine, that last charge was set on heavy stun. This time, you guessed it, Shorty, it's set to kill. So remember, this woman is Havok's girlfriend at this point. So interesting, she's a bit different from Lorna Dane, yes? Weren't you listening, Magistrate, says Psylocke, as she puts the focused totality of her psychic powers, that Psyblade, right through the back of Tam's head and brain. As Jubilee said, says Psylocke, nobody dies tonight, not even you. That's good stuff. And again, this is a nice drawing here of Tam with her face flat on the ground. That's difficult to do. Mark Silvestri does that kind of pose well, and Jim Lee doing his particular version of it here. It looks credible. And look at the open mouths of Boom Boom and Rictor there in the background. They've never seen Psylocke before, not this Asian version of her anyway. And so here at the bottom of the page, we've got a Jim Lee speciality, which is an open border panel and a lot of small figures, but they all are very well drawn. And so we've got the 4 magistrates there getting tied up, and we have a bit of dialogue here between Psylocke and the New Mutants. Do not worry, she will recover with only a headache to mark the experience, says Psylocke. And Rictor says that's a lot more merciful than what she had in store for us. But Boom Boom, who knows Wolverine, is taken aback by the fact that Wolverine has taken quite the beating and he's struggling getting up off the ground. That is new for her to see. And Jubilee, who has been Wolverine's caretaker since Uncanny X-Men 251 and in particular 252, is over there concerned, trying to help him up, but he's pushing her away. Great body language, great storytelling by Jim Lee in the drawings here. So he tells Jubilee, I'm all right. And Jubilee continues, she decked you pretty hard. And then he yells, I'm fine, girl. How many times do I have to repeat myself? Only till it's finally true, she counters. And now he's annoyed. You're pushing Jubilation Lee. Back off. Leave me be. And I like the way Orzechowski renders the speech balloon there with the jagged edges indicating, really giving a sense that Wolverine is peed off with Jubilee. But also it's because he's frustrated at the fact that he's just not recovering from beatings like he used to. And as I said earlier, that goes all the way back to Uncanny X-Men 205. So, Boom Boom's asking about him. He doesn't look so. She was about to say good. And now Jubilee turns around and she takes Wolverine's side. What do you know, Hotshot? He's my partner. He saved your behinds. What more do you want? But she races over to Wolverine. He's gone down into the alley like a wounded animal and sitting down amongst all the garbage and trash. Man, oh man, she says, how did I ever let myself get tangled up in such a mess? Wolverine now has recovered his sense of humor and says to her, what's the matter, kiddo? Got no faith? And she says, I'll settle for smarts, thank you very much. I mean, this is so dumb. You're in no shape for this. What we got to do is find you a hidey hole and put you to bed till you get better. And that's what she did back in Uncanny X-Men 252. But Wolverine here, pragmatic, laconic, says that's not an option. And her response is, what is it with this total macho junk? Are you desperate to die, man, or what? And she's been harping on that line for a while now. And his response is interesting. Again, it's very much in keeping with this developed characterization of Wolverine. Sometimes jubilation, he says, things happen. whether you want them to or not. Then it becomes a matter of how you choose to go. All I'm asking is that you respect mine. So this is stoic Wolverine. There's going to be a little bit of a spat here between Boom Boom and Jubilee. Wolverine intervenes, Temper Ladies, makes the introductions, tells Jubilee that they're new mutants and thus friends. And Rictor, very respectful of Wolverine, says, "Thanks for the helping hand, sir. Are you part of a larger rescue force?" Wolverine's response is, again, just so practical, pragmatic, understated. What you see, boy, is what we got. If others are involved, we don't know about them. Important thing now is to find out what we're up against. Got no time to do this the old-fashioned way. I want you both to open your minds and memories to Psylocke. So she's an unknown quantity to them, and they're a little bit hesitant about it, and she looks quite menacing there in that particular pose. But turn the page now, and we get Psylocke entering into their minds, and we get a recap of what's gone on in the previous parts of the X-Tinction Agenda event. The anatomy there is really well done and rendered here in Scott Williams inks. You see hatch lines that are very different from the way that Scott Williams' inking style will become codified later on. So both Lee and Williams doing different things at this early point of their collaboration before their style would settle down into, you know, what sometimes seemed to be in the mid to late 90s kind of a plastic, super shiny style, before things got revised again with Batman Hush. But at this point in their career, there's such youthful energy on the page, such invention, such experimentation. It all looks fantastic. So the recap over, Psylocke realizes that there are some other X-Men and the whole of X-Factor on the island. So Rictor's delighted. Now we'll see who kicks whose butt, he says. And Jubilee wants to go. Or rather, Wolverine here says, Psylocke and I'll check out the Citadel, because they know now that the New Mutants were taken prisoner there. We find Storm and Rainey, we'll bring them out. Jubilee, you get these two to safety. So Jubilee protests, and she says, no way, I go with you. This is a nice close-up, great spotting of blacks and lighting on Wolverine's bloodied face here. Wrong, he says. Again, that laconic style that Claremont is writing him in. It's really good stuff. And then he explains, he explains and says, someone with powers needs to look after them, and you're elected. And Boom Boom protests, we can take care of ourselves. But Wolverine insists this kind of caper isn't won by grandstanding, girl. And it chimes with what he said earlier to Jubilee. The stakes are too high and the opposition too dangerous. You want to survive, you swallow your pride and do as you're told. So Wolverine taking on the leadership role in this little group of X-Men and New Mutants, and everybody ultimately obeying him. And now we get an interesting sequence here in the middle of this story, featuring Manoli Wetherill again facilitating a television debate between, on the one hand, Dr. David Moreau, who is Janosha's chief engineer, and Dr. Moira MacTaggart, who of course is a longtime ally of the X-Men. But remember, at this point in continuity, Moira MacTaggart is under the influence of the Jack Wayne personality of Legion, and in the background of all of that, the Shadow King. And so she's acting a little bit off, or a lot rather, she's acting a lot off her usual maybe demure or understated characterization. And so she's dressing more wildly and assertively, and she's more aggressive in her style of debating here as well. She's more forthright, and of course she's got a personal investment in the New Mutants who were abducted, kidnapped to Janosha, because Rain Sinclair is her ward. So she's got a particular personal investment in that, and it kind of surprises me, you know, now thinking about it, that Moira didn't send somebody from Mur Isle to Janosha, But again, I can kind of counter that with the idea that the Shadow King wouldn't have allowed it. So there you go. Anyway, the debate here is about the rights and wrongs of what Genosha has done, kidnapping the children. And Moreau, of course, insisting the point is these mutants claim an affiliation with an outlaw group calling itself the X-Men. And what else but terrorist would you brand those who attack your country and threaten the overthrow of your very society? So he's referring back to the events of Uncanny X-Men 235 to 238, particularly issue 238. It is these mutants who have declared war on Genosha. Are we not then to defend ourselves? Now, a little artistic achievement on this page is Jim Lee's decision to show the two telescreens at an angle. So this is very difficult to do in the era before computer manipulation of digital images. This all had to be ruled out with perspective grids in order to show a flat version of Moreau's face on the screen at that angle, and likewise with Moira MacTaggert there as well. And so a lot of work would have gone into these tilted screens, and you might not think that just looking at the page, especially if you're used to the manipulations that are possible today with computers. This is all hand done with penciled out perspective grid lines in order to get this effect here. And it's Jim Lee trying something and experimenting in this issue, and I think it's great stuff. And again, turning the page here, the debate continues. You can see there's a lot of speech balloons there, but this is another interesting image from Jim Lee, and it really doesn't look very much like his style. There are very curved and organic type lines for the outline of Moreau's face there, that tight 3/4 profile close-up. Also the use of the screen tone there by Scott Williams in the inks, and it looks like he might have been using some photo reference for that face. So that's not the kind of thing he would be doing in years later, but it looks very effective. Really, really nice stuff, and I wish he would have continued doing more of that kind of thing. So the debate ends by Moreau saying Genosha has been, since its founding, a beacon of racial and political tolerance in a part of the world that badly needs both. We seek only to live in harmony with ourselves and our neighbours. These mutants seek to sweep away all that. If we give in, then we cede to them the total mastery of our lives and fates, and thereby betray all we have worked for as a nation and a people, all we hold most dear. And that we simply will not do, no matter what the cost. So I love this about Claremont. Genosha is an apartheid country that treats human beings with mutant potential as slave labor for their economy. But on the other hand, they are a beacon of racial and political tolerance. So Claremont really doesn't, usually will complicate things in terms of a straight black and white good versus evil in his stories. Now there is one flat out evil character in the X-Tinction agenda, and we'll get to him soon enough. But let's continue here. So the TV broadcast is over, and this is Chief Magistrate Anderson. She's a character that featured back in 235 to 238, and she here in her dialogue with Moreau tells him that he's going to need some protection. And also they have a little bit here about both of them noticing the extreme departure in the appearance and manner of Moira MacTaggert. And then Anderson says to the engineer, David, I suggest you think seriously about what you said to MacTaggert. Seizing these children is very much akin to grabbing a saber-toothed tiger by the tail. And he responds, saber-toothed tigers don't have tails. Precisely my point, she says. We fought the X-Men, we know what they can do. And I like this. Magneto, the self-styled master of magnetism, raised a volcano beneath the ancient city of Varikino from half the world away and wiped it from the face of the earth. And Havok, with a single blast of energy, reduced our former citadel to dust. So Claremont delving into the history of the X-Men for these examples that Anderson is referring to. Now the Havok one is issue 238, but this one about Magneto is really interesting because that goes all the way back to Uncanny X-Men 150. So Claremont really giving a sense of the deep, rich history of this book that he's been working on for 15 years by this point. And it really gave a sense to readers at the time who were new to this material, you know, that there was lots and lots of detail, lots and lots of history behind everything going on in the comic, which was appealing rather than off-putting for me. And so Lee is handling everything in the art in terms of the transition from the television studio, the G-Engineer returning to his office, and it's all whizzing by, but there's lots and lots of detail here. You know, he's drawing a television studio. He has these magistrates here in the foreground with most of the details of their costumes blacked out. He's got one of these flying craft that they've used to fly to his offices, and so on and so forth. So no scrimping on detail here whatsoever. And then Moreau is in his office, and he's there in private, and he's having a little talk to himself about his son Philip, who he feels betrayed him by running off to America with his mutate girlfriend Jenny Ransom. And he says, all your life you never once thought of the mutates whose talents make us a prosperous, self-sufficient nation, the envy of the world. Only when your girlfriend tested gene positive and was called for service, only when you yourself were personally affected, did this society become oppressive, and your father some kind of born-again Nazi. Did you think it didn't hurt to do my duty? Curse you, boy, he yells. She was my goddaughter. And again, it's Claremont, you know, not characterizing the chief G-Engineer as a cardboard cutout, two-dimensional villain. He is complicated. He has reasons for doing what he does and does not conceive himself as an evil man, even though readers might think otherwise. And while he's there looking at the photo of his son, and again, this is a classic Jim Lee layout where we've got a borderless panel at the top, in the middle, or at the bottom of the page. It's a really effective piece. It's a quiet moment of Moreau looking at the picture of his son, and then Storm arrives. So in X Factor number 60, Storm decided to go back into the Citadel. She had escaped in order to take a hostage, and so it turns out the hostage she was thinking of is Moreau, and now she's got a blade right up against his throat. And he protests. He says, I'm not your enemy, Storm. It's Hodge. If he has his way, every person on this island, on the entire planet, with even a trace of mutancy in their genes will be slain. Whatever you think of me, my responsibility is to my country. So he always conceives himself as a patriot, and its welfare. I've no agenda beyond Genoshan borders. Leave us alone, we'll do the same to you. It was Hodge who proposed the attack on your team. It's Hodge who's pushing this whole mad scheme. Excuse me. So Storm gets it. So I must then choose between the lesser of two devils. So there's no easy choices for Storm. And Moreau says, it's your only chance and mine as well. And then interrupted by the two-dimensional villain of the piece, Hodge. This is a really nice panel here. We've got a use of a screen tone, casting some shade over Storm and Moreau, and then the silhouette of Hodge's monstrous head peering into the room. Well. So real villain dialogue. What prey do we have here? So let's see. So he's a real hammy villain, is Hodge, but fun to see the X-Men go up such a character as well. Does this, I wonder, come under the heading of a timely interruption? So, you know, a little nod to readers that this is a plot device of him happening upon them just in this manner. And then this gun that he carries under his chin, so to speak, shoots out these pinions, which pin Storm to the wall by her shoulders, and shocks Moreau. Why so shocked, squeamish man? It's no more than the gene joke intended for you. Your turn's over, Storm. Now it's mine, says Cameron Hodge. But the G-Engineer gets in the way, and he says she's too valuable. She should go into the gene pool where she can benefit the country she threatened. The president turns up as well. My G-Engineer has a point, Commander Hodge, she says. So he says, as you wish, Madam President. He acquiesces. I confess I look forward most eagerly. And look at that villainous grin on his face. This is shades of the way that Jim Lee in a decade to come, a decade and a half to come, would draw the Joker. And he continues and says, to seeing the mutate transmodation in action, I assume, Moreau, storms will begin without delay. So he's not going to just trust the G-Engineer to do what he says. And the G-Engineer responds here. Great lighting on his face as well, of course, immediately. So let's see, get past the advertisements and see where do we go next. Well, we pick up with Wolverine and Psylocke. So they're infiltrating the Citadel and they're coming in by air. They're using those two air vehicles, those flitters of the magistrates that they knocked out earlier in the issue, and they're coming in towards the Citadel here. And so we get a little bit of dialogue between them. A very interesting question here from Psylocke is to Wolverine regarding the origins of his adamantium claws and his unbreakable bones. How did it come to be? Does he ever wonder about it? And his response is interesting here. Nope. One day I didn't have them, next I did. I made adjustments, life went on. That was the end of it. And I wonder, is this a little comment at this point regarding the upcoming Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X? Does Claremont know about it at this point? And he's getting in his opinion regarding it. But that's Wolverine's point of view anyway. Nice little sequence here. I like the way that Jim Lee has split the border of the panel here to give a suggestion of motion. And Wolverine continues and he says, for me, darling, what is. I got no interest in pondering the why of things, but every life has its obligations. I just want to settle mine while I'm still able. On top of the list is what I owe. And he's about to say the X-Men, but Psylocke gets a psychic flash, and you can just see there at the bottom of the page, if you pay attention, a little image of D.H. Storm overlapping her face. And Wolverine thinks this is a great panel as well, borderless panel, as he jumps out of his flitter towards Psylocke as she's lost control of it. No physical threat in sight. Psychic attack then. Must be pretty nasty to punch past her defenses hard enough to trigger that kind of scream. Her flitter's out of control. Really, really good stuff. He's just thinking practically. But also it sort of contradicts what he was saying earlier, where he says he's got no interest in pondering the why of things. You know, he's trying to put together something here. He's conjecturing, but also acting in order to save her. So he manages to catch onto her on her flitter, but his physical contact with her links him to what's happening to Storm, the transmodation process. So it can't be blocked out. So they're both in agony, and Wolverine is piloting the flitter for a crash landing. Nice DeLuca effect there. Crash landing onto the roof of one of the buildings in Hammer Bay. And a rescue vehicle, or rather, let's see, what is this? Oh yeah, so some magistrate vehicle comes into view to investigate the crash, and Wolverine calls out for rescue on the W, guys. I got an officer down and hurt here, because of course they're disguised as magistrates. And then he whispers to Psylocke, make it look good, Bets. Have no fear, this won't require much of an act, she says. So now they're en route to the Citadel. But this is a little bit of a contrivance where whoever's flying them says, ladies is sensitive. Or rather, I wonder, is this Wolverine who could be speaking? Ladies is sensitive, just took a major size shot, probably from one of those flaming muty X-Men. It is him that's speaking. She needs immediate treatment from the G-Engineer. So whoever's flying this craft is convinced and says, hang on, buddy, we'll take you right to him. And here we are at the Citadel, and Wolverine and Psylocke have arrived. But look who also has arrived. And it's not by chance, because he's heard about his girlfriend's, the incident with his girlfriend Tam. It said she was hurt. He says, she's here, Summers, says one of these guys. But keep it quick, lovebirds, okay? This is a great little moment. So Wolverine there, Summers, lovebirds, and Psylocke just looks around, bye-bye, bluff. And then, shocked, Havok, what is this? You're not Tam. And then, just look at the brutality of the decision that Wolverine and Psylocke make here. Nor are you what we anticipated, Alex Summers. Our former teammate is a magistrate through and through, and Wolverine pops his claws. Then we got no option but to treat him like one. And this is a great little sequence here as well, as Havok winds up one of his plasma blasts, and Jubilee pulls the camera in on him and his rage. X-Men in the Citadel, he exclaims, whoever you are, you're wearing my lady's uniform. If you harmed her to get it, we're going to get a big blast from him on the subsequent page. And there you go. And in my view, the diagonal layout of the panel here is not just to accommodate a almost full figure drawing of Havok, but I think it's a little tribute to Neil Adams as well, because those are the hallmarks of Neil Adams' panel layouts from his classic late 60s run with Roy Thomas. So there we go. And Havok's plasma blasts are incredibly violent and blast a hole all the way out of the Citadel and take out the main power coupling. So the lights are off, and of course that's going to aid both Psylocke and Wolverine in particular. Somebody gives orders, probably Havok, infrared scan, 3-man teams, full automag shoot to kill. So Wolverine's impressed. Right orders, smart moves. You're good, bunkies, very Claremontian phrase. I'm better, especially when I'm mad. And again, a classic Jim Lee layout here. Open border panel at the bottom of the page in this instance. Also another one of his tropes, figures all in silhouette, but it's effective, it reads well. Havok here winding up for another blast. Wolverine coming towards him. I like the way, the angle that Jim Lee has chosen for that. So you can see Wolverine just slashing his way through this whole scrum of magistrates, making his way to Havok. Get out of my way, says Havok to the others. Give me a clear shot. Be patient, bub, says Wolverine. Your turn's coming. Just great dialogue. And then just more of this macho dialogue where Wolverine says to Havok, give it up, boy. I popped these claws. You'll need a whole new head. And he responds, I'm no boy, old man, and not before my plasma blast sears the flesh clean off your bones. But then Psylocke, as is her wont at this point, sneaks in from behind and takes Havok out with her psychic knife and asks, why is it you men always seem to talk in macho slogans? So Psylocke doesn't talk, she acts. And yeah, again, she's quite brutal. Better I had let the Reavers slay him months ago, back in 251, than send him through the Siege Perilous to become this. Wolverine is hoping maybe, figure your psychic knife shocks some sense back into him. Impossible to know, she says. Great top-down angle as they flee. Well, they're not fleeing. They're searching for Storm and Rain. It depends on how firmly he's embraced this new reality, she says. Do you have any trace of Storm's scent? And this is great storytelling. So you can just see these little tentacles coming out of this doorway and grabbing Wolverine. And a nice tilted Dutch angle there. Also a use of a screen tone for the side of the doorway, and the shadow cast by Wolverine here as he's yanked into the room. And of course, it is our villain, Cameron Hodge. And he has holding Wolverine up there in his tentacles. How boorish of me to forget my manners. I'm Cameron Hodge, he introduces himself. And you, I'll wager, are Psylocke. Wave bye-bye to the nice lady Wolverine. So the implication is he's puppeteering Wolverine here. Wolverine's body, and waving his hands there with his tentacles. And Psylocke has one of those magistrates' rifles. And here in the background, so they're almost upon the laboratory where the gene engineer is working on Storm, the transmodation process. But Wolverine was faking. Talk is cheap, bub. Great anchor image of him slashing away at Cameron Hodge. And we X-Men don't get nailed anywhere near so easily. So Hodge is sort of impressed. Nasty, nasty, you were shamming for all the good it does you. And here's your companion with her big bad gun. And Claremont again having a little joke here. But then that's traditional for you X-women, yes. Whatever does the job, Butcher, she says. That's a great, great panel. And again, just note the slightly tilted diagonal borders for these panels. Again, I think Jim Lee maybe thinking about Neil Adams style layouts, but it also kind of gives full scope to see the length and barrel of her rifle there as she shoots away at Hodge. Yeah, great, great storytelling, great command of anatomy, and we're seeing images and drawings from Jim Lee that we haven't seen before. So again, as I said towards the beginning of the video, this young artist is trying things out with his style, and it really is. It looks amazing on the page. So only a couple of pages left. Hodge gets the better of both Wolverine and Psylocke. And while all that's taking place, again, look at those diagonal panel layouts. The G-Engineer is still working away on Storm, but he's thinking of a double cross. They're no match for him, but with his attention focused on those X-Men, at last I'm free to act. I wonder though, will this make me a hero or my country's greatest traitor? So if we look at his computer screen, it says standard matrix cancelled, custom configuration. So what is his custom configuration? Well, it won't be revealed for a few parts more of the crossover series, but he is crossing Hodge here. This is a really nice panel. We got this reverse angle on Hodge as Psylocke is caught in his tentacles, and he says to her, "Caught you, only because, Hodge, that's precisely what I wanted, hoping you'd bring me close enough to strike," she exclaims. So she hits him with that psychic knife. It's plunged deep into his forehead, but no dice, no effect. So he just laughs. Didn't work. Let's see what happens, shall we, beautiful, when I do the same to you. So somehow he's able to reverse the psychic attack on Psylocke. And here's another interesting art technique as well, where Jim Lee is somehow drawing a distorted version of Psylocke. Her face, it's like elongated. So intriguing how that would have been achieved. It looks really effective. Again, that would be something that would be easy to do automatically with a computer manipulation of an image, but he's doing this all on the page without the aid of any computer to come up with that. And now the last page. So the G-Engineer tells Hodge that the trans mode process is complete, but remember, it's a custom process. "Open it, Moreau," says Hodge. "I want to see." Again, another trope of Jim Lee's, all the figures in black, but it all reads really clearly and well. So we got a nice big anchor image here of Storm, and it looks like she's undergone the mutate process, and now she is mutate number 20. And it looks like both Wolverine and Psylocke are out of the battle. That takes care of her, says Hodge, with that kind of horror uplighting on his face. "But whatever, my sweet, shall we do with you?" he says to Storm. Find out, sort of, in New Mutants 96 and X Factor 61. And in 30 days, the X-Men go on trial for capital crimes. So we get one page of letters here. And the letters concern everything from issue 264 to 267. And next, in the next box, we're told you have to read New Mutants 96 and X Factor 61 before joining in here next month as Cameron Hodge's plan for revenge grows even more deadly. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 271. I think this is the strongest chapter arts-wise in the whole 9-part series crossover event. It's Jim Lee's strongest issue of the 3 he does and contributes to the X-Tinction agenda. Let me know your thoughts on that and anything else that came up in this particular issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.